We are on Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Aleph on the third line. Remember, what we were talking about yesterday was trying to reconcile the sheet of Rebbe Yehuda, but the truth is that today's Daf seems to be L'kulei Alma, seems to be going according to everyone, because what we're focusing on now is when a person has a machshava on a half a kazayas, and another half a kazayas, and another half a kazayas. Now, we had said in our Mishnah that when you have a machshava to eat a half a kazayas of whatever it is, chutz lizmano, during one avoda, and then you have another machshava to eat another half a kazayas, again chutz lizmano, so then those two thoughts can be conjoined together to create a situation of kares. But if you have a machshava of kechatzi zayis chutz lizmano and a chatzi zayis chutz l'mekomo, so then those conjoin together to render the carbon puzzle, but they don't convey kares. So based on that, the Gemara now states the following: Itmar chatzi zayis chutz lizmano, chatzi zayis chutz l'mekomo, v'chatzi zayis chutz lizmano. What if a person has three distinct thoughts? One is, I'm going to eat a half a kazayas chutz lizmano. Then he thinks a moment later, I'm going to eat a kazayas chutz l'mekomo, a chatzi zayis chutz l'mekomo. And then he has a third thought, I'm going to eat a half a kazayas chutz lizmano. So, the question is, how do you look at that? On the one hand, the first time you get to a kazayas, you've got a mixture of half chutz lizmano and half chutz l'mekomo. So therefore, you should passel the carbon, but there should be no kares. But that's not the way Rava looks at it. Omar Rava, vayikatz kiyoshein hapigol. He says, quoting a pasuk in Tehillim, that the sleeper wakes up and it becomes pigol. In other words, essentially what he's saying, and Tosa says it's not exactly the same as matzah minas mino, but it's a similar concept. In other words, it's basically you have two thoughts of chutz lizmano that bookend a middle thought of chutz l'mekomo. The two bookends join together and form a full machshava of a kazayas of chutz lizmano, and that trumps the half a kazayas of chutz l'mekomo, so that you don't reckon with it, and you look at it as you have a full kazayas machshava of chutz lizmano, and therefore there's kares. But for Rav Hamnuna Amar Erev Machshavos Havin, Rav Hamnuna won't have that. He says, no, you'll just look at the first two half kazesim. It's a mixture of zmano and makomo, and therefore there's no kares. Amar Rav Amino Aminola. So Rava says, let me argue my point. I can prove it to you from the following Mishnah. Ditnan kebeitza ochel rishon uchebeitza ochel sheni shebololon zebazeh. Okay, now, in order to just review the laws of Tumah and Tahara very simplistically, we know that there are multiple levels of Tumah. You can have an Av HaTumah, the highest level, or actually Avi Avos is the highest, but let's just say for now, Av HaTumah is the highest. Then if it comes in contact with a kli or a food item, that becomes a Rishon L'Tumah. And then a Rishon that touches a food item, that food item becomes a Sheni L'Tumah. And if the sheni touches another food item, if that food item is truma, so then that could become a shlishi. And then it stops. Well, shlishi could touch a kudshim, and that becomes a revi. But the point is that it's different levels of tumah. How much food do you need in order for something to become tameh? In other words, how much food needs to be in one place in order for it to become tameh? So the answer is a mashahu. Even a crumb can become tameh if it touches a sheretz. But how much of mass of food do you need in order to transfer tumah? In other words, when a food item becomes tameh, in order for it to transfer tumah to something else, how much mass of food do you need? You need the size of a kibetza, an egg size. It's about twice of a kazayas. If you'd have less than that, the food item itself becomes tameh, but it cannot transmit tumah. So the illustration in the Mishnah is as follows. You have, let's say, two clumps or balls of dough, okay? And one of them is a Rishon L'Tumah, and one of them is a Sheni L'Tumah. You then homogenize them, you mix them together, right? And the both of them are a kibetza. But because they've been mixed in together, Rishon, so Chabei Ochel Sheni Shabalon Zebazeh, and then the halacha is Rishon. Then collectively, since there's a Rishon L'tumah there of a kibetza, then anything that touches this now mixture of two kibetzim contracts a sheni, because it now has the status of a Rishon. However, Cholkan Zeh Sheni V'Zeh Sheni. If, however, let's say you cut this new big ball of dough in half to get two smaller one beitza size balls again, each one of them is a mixture of the original Rishon and the original Sheni. So neither ball has a full Rishon, has a full kibetza of a Rishon in it. And therefore you judge each one as a Sheni L'tumah, and therefore they can only contaminate Truma and not Chulin. Okay? Now, so Rava says, what I can infer from this is, Ha Chazer the Irvan Rishon Havi. If I were to go ahead and re-homogenize these two balls into one big two kibetza ball, so then what would be the halacha? It would revert back to being a Rishon. So what I want to prove from here is, by analogy, is that just like when you separate two things so that each one separately is not a Rishon L'tumah, but you can put them back together, you can reconstitute it to make it have a shear and make it reacquire its Rishon L'tumah status. In the same vein, you can do the same thing with two machshavos of pigul that neither one of them has the power to be a kares offense, even though they're divided by a half a kazayas that's chutz l'makomo, but by reconstituting them, by bookending them back to back, right? In other words, one at the beginning and one at the end, they are conjoinable, just like these two kibetzim are conjoinable to make a Rishon L'tumah. That's the argument, says the Gemara.
When you join them, you're joining a Rishon with a Sheni, and then joined together they become a Rishon.
That's correct, because...
It's a little bit different than Pigel's man.
No. That's not the analogy. You're looking at the first part. Rav is saying the second part is as follows. After you've conjoined the Rishon and the Sheni together, it has the status collectively as a Rishon. When you divide them afterwards, each one has a Sheni because neither one has a full kibetza of a Rishon. But when you reconstitute it at this point, it goes back to being a Rishon. So something that was previously in its divided state does not have the power. When you put it back together, it does have the power. So similarly, two half kibetzim, which individually do not have the power, can be conjoined to have the power. That's the argument. Okay? So the Gemara now says, Mimai, and how do I know that when you reconstitute them, the two smaller kibetzas, into one two kibetza ball, that it has the status of a Rishon? Midikatani Seifa, Nafal Zeh Ba'atzma V'Zeh Ba'atzma Al Kikar Shel Truma Pasluha, Naflu Shneim Ke'echas Asu'u Hashniya. Because it says in the next part of that Mishnah that if these two one kibetza balls that are mixtures of Rishon and Sheni individually fall on Truma, so then the halacha is they contaminate and make tameh the Truma. But the Truma itself is contaminated only as a shlishi because it's being touched by a Sheni. But if you were to drop them together onto a piece of Truma, since you're reconstituting them and making them connected, they have the status of a Rishon, and therefore not only is the Truma a shlishi, but the Truma has the power to contaminate other Truma because it's a Sheni, not just a shlishi. So,
by Mashkin, all this reverse.
Yes, you're right, Mr. Friedman, but let's not overcomplicate the issue right now. V'Rav Hamnuna hasam ika shiura, hacha leka shiura. Rav Hamnuna says your analogy is not apt. He says the reason why you can reconstitute from going from a Sheni to a Rishon is because they started off each one having a full kibetza. You divided it and then put it back together, so you're reconstituting something that had the original requisite measurement. But here, in the case of pigul, each machshava never had the requisite amount to constitute pigul. So you can't put two things that are deficient in amount together to give them the requisite amount. Because they started off, the machshava started off as chatzi kazayis. See, and that's the difference, Rav Hamnuna says. Over here in the case of Tumah, you started off with a full kibetza of a Rishon L'Tumah, then you mixed it with a Sheni, and then divided it, and now you want to put it back together. That I hear. Something that started with a full shear is divided and then put back together can regain its original status. But here, the two machshavas of Chatzi Zayis you never had a full machshava of a kazayis at any point, that it could be divided and put back together. And that's why it's not an apt analogy. So, Amar Rav Hamnuna, Mina Aminala. So now it's Rav Hamnuna's turn to argue his point. How can I prove to you that these two bookend Chatzi Zayis Chutz Lizmano machshavas are not conjoinable? Ditnan ha'ochel shenitma ba'av hatuma v'shenitma bivlad hatuma mitzdarfim ze im ze l'tamei bikal shebishneha. And here Rashi just points out that we're talking about two half kibetzes. So neither of them has the requisite amount to transmit tumah. If you have one half kibetza that's a rishon l'tumah, and you have another half kibetza that's a sheni l'tumah, if you mix them together, then they only have the power of a sheni to transmit tumah to truma, to make it into a shlishi, right? Because neither of them has the requisite amount. My lav afal gavda hadar malye. So Rav Hamnuna says, I'll take it even one step further. Wouldn't it make sense to say that the Mishnah is true even if not only did you put two half kibetzim together, one a rishon and one a sheni, and now you have a full kibetza, but even if afterwards you took another half kibetza of a rishon and added it to that full kibetza, you still would only treat it as a sheni and not as a rishon. So you see that just trying to reconstitute two halves and make it into a whole does not work. So the Gemara says, no, dilma delo hadar malye. Not necessarily, Rav Hamnuna. You're making an assumption that's not there explicit in that Mishnah. It could be that if you started with half a kibetz of a rishon, and you mixed it with a half a kibetz of a sheni, and then you mix that with a half a kibetz of a rishon, maybe taka it would rise to its status of a rishon. You have no way of knowing, and if that's the case, so then maybe taka two machshavas of a half a kazayas are conjoinable. Ki asa ravdimi omar chatzi zayis chutz lemekomo v'chatzi zayis chutz lizmano v'chatzi zayis chutz lizmano tani bar kabara pigul, because ein chatzi zayis mol b'makom kazayis. We're going to have now three opinions of Amoraim who are quoting a brisa from Bar Kapara which relate a similar idea. So Rav Dimi's version of Bar Kapara's brisa is as follows. A person starts off with a machshava of half a kazayas chutz lemekomo. And then he has a second machshava, half a kazayas chutz lizmano, and then a third machshava of a half a kazayas chutz lizmano. So it's mekomo, zmano, zmano. Okay, you got the order? So Bar Kapara says that's pigul. Why? Because the initial half a kazayas is sort of null and void vis-a-vis the full kazayas that you have with 2 and 3. Half zmano and half zmano. Okay? So, ki asa rabin omar, chatzi zayis chutz lizmano, v'chatzi zayis chutz lizmano, v'chatzi zayis chutz lemekomo, tani bar kapara pigul, because ein chatzi zayis mol b'makom kazayis. Rabin disagrees, and he says that was not Bar Kapara's halacha. In that case, if you started off with a half a kazayas of mekomo, then as soon as you have your second machshav of a half a kazayas of zmano, those two will conjoin, and the carbon will be puzzled, but there's no kares. The only time Bar Kapara teaches that you don't reckon with the half a kazayas chutz lemekomo is if the number 1 was half chutz lizmano, number 2 was half chutz lizmano, and number 3 was half chutz lemekomo. Zmano, zmano, mekomo. Only there, because you've accumulated one full kazayas initially without any other interference, only there does Bar Kapara say you don't reckon with the half kazayas that's chutz lemekomo afterwards, and it's batel. Okay, Rav Ashi masni hachi. But Rav Ashi's version now of bar kapara is totally different from the previous two. Chatzi zayis chutz lizmano, uchezayis chetzio chutz lemekomo v'chetzio chutz lizmano, tani bar kapara pigul, ein chatzi zayis moel b'makom kezayis. And as Rashi points out, Rav Ashi holds like Rava, that when you've got kezayis, if you've got zmano, mekomo, zmano, you discard the mekomo, and you can join the two half kezesim of zmano and can join them to make a karesable offense. However, Rav Ashi takes that one step further, and he says even when the first, you only have two machshavas. The first machshava is a half a kezayis of zmano, and the second machshava is on a full kezayis of meat, and you say half of it I'll eat chutz lizmano, and half of it I'll eat chutz lemekomo. The chiddush is that even though you're saying the two of them at the same time, so you might argue that they're not separable, Rav Ashi says they are separable in order to conjoin the two half kezayises of chutz lizmano together and discard the half a kezayis of chutz lemekomo. Even in that case, we would say that there's kares possible. Amar Rebbe Yanai. Okay, let's go on. Now we're going on to a new topic. Chishev sheyochaluhu klavim lemachar pigul. Dichsiv ve'es izevel yochlu haklavim b'chelek Yisrael. Now Rabbi Yanai tells us a chiddush, and he says, we know that if a person has a machshava that he's going to eat something, chutz lizmano, that's called pigul, right? What if my machshava is that another person is going to eat something chutz lizmano? That's also pigul. What if I'm thinking about my dog Fido, and I say Fido is going to eat a kezayis chutz lizmano? So he says that's also called eating, and therefore it's subject to pigul. You know how I know this? Because there's a pasuk that says that the dogs are going to eat izevel. Not a very tasty meal. Maybe for them it was. But anyway, the point is that you see that the verb achila is applied to dogs. And so therefore, even if a person is a machshava that a dog is going to eat something chutz lizmano from this korban, that's subject to kares. So maskef lo Rav Ami, ela me'ata, chishev shetochalehu eish lemachar, dichsliv tochalehu eish lo nofach, hachanami de pigul? Are you suggesting that even if you're thinking that the fire will consume something, let's say you say, I hereby have in mind that fire will consume a piece of meat. That's also called achila. And are you telling me that that's also subject to pigul? Right? Because the pasuk says, uses the verb achila vis-a-vis fire. Maybe you'll tell me, Taka, that's the halacha, but wait a minute. V'hatznan, le'echol kachatzi zayus ulahaktir chatzki kezayus kosher she'en achila v'haktorah mitztarfin. But 1 second, how can that be? If they're both called achila, fire consumption and human consumption are both called achila, which they are, then why is it that when a person has a machshava that he's going to eat a half a kezayus, chutz lizmano, and he's going to cause the mizbeach to burn a half a kezayus chutz lizmano, why is that not conjoinable? They're both called achila. So the Gemara says, Ida afke b'lashon achila hachanami, hacha b'mayaskinan da afka b'lashon haktorah, the lashon achila l'chud, v'lashon haktorah l'chud. So the Gemara answers, the truth is, they're both called achila. And if taka, you had a machshava, right, because the consumption on the mizbeach is called achila also. But the reason why it's not a problem of pigul when you have a machshava of half a kezayis for humans and a half a kezayis for the mizbeach is because your thinking involved two different verbs. You said, to verbalize your thinking, you said, I plan to eat a half a kezayis chutz lizmano, and I plan to be maktir, which is to offer on the altar a half a kezayis chutz lemekomo. But if you would have said, I plan to eat a half a kezayis chutz lizmano, and I plan to have the mizbeach eat a half a kezayis chutz lizmano, then it would be subject to pigul. Boy Rav Ashi, chishev lechol kezayis b'shnei b'nei adam mau, basar machshava azlinan di'ika shi'ura, o basar ochlen azlinan v'leka shi'ura. So Rav Ashi asks an interesting question. What if your thinking is, I'm going to have my friends Reuven and Shimon jointly eat a kezayis chutz lizmano. So on the one hand, my thinking is to contaminate one kezayis of this korban. So on the one hand, it should be pigul. But on the other hand, what they're doing is not called achila in my mind, because when you eat less than a kezayis, that's not called achila. So do you go according to the person's thinking, or do you go according to the actions that he's thinking about, which is not called achila, because it's two people? So Amar Abaye Toshma, Lechol kachatzi zayis ulahaktir kachatzi zayis kosher, she'ein achila v'haktorah mitztarfin. Halechol v'lechol dumya delechol ulahaktir, v'hechidami b'shnei b'nei adam mitztaref, shma mina. So the Abaya says, let me prove it to you from that line in the Mishnah that we just quoted. If a person has a thought that I'm going to eat a half a kezayis and I'm going to be maktir on the mizbeach half a kezayis, there's no pigul, there's no kares, right? However, by inference, we could say that if there's going to be a half a kezayis of eating and another half a kezayis of eating by two separate parties, then that is a kares offense. So you see from here that you can conjoin two different eatings from two different parties, right? And therefore that proves our point that you don't need one person eating the whole kezayis. You could even be thinking about kezayis being eaten by two separate parties, and that's still considered to be pigul. Okay, boy Rava, chishev lechol kezayis b'yesur michdei achilas pras mahu la achilas gavoa medaminan lei or la achilas hedjot medaminan lei. Next question. What if I am thinking I'm going to eat a kezayis chutz lizmano, but I'm going to nibble on it slowly, and I plan to eat it over the course of an hour? So that's not really called eating, because eating by halachic definition is bichdei achilas pras. You have to be able to eat a kezayis in the time that it takes you to eat 3 kibetzim of bread, which is anywhere between 2 and 9 minutes. Right? So it's not called eating, and therefore maybe it's not pigul. On the other hand, since when the mizbeach burns something, that's also subject to the laws of pigul, and that sometimes it takes the mizbeach much longer than bichdei achilas pras to burn something. So just like there's a mizbeach pigul that takes longer than bichdei achilas pras, so too there could be human eating that takes longer than bichdei achilas pras to create pigul. So Amar Abaye, Toshma, Lechol kachatzi zayis ulahaktir kachatzi zayis kosher she'ein achila v'haktorah mitztarfin. Taima delechol ulahaktir halechol v'lechol mitztaref. So Abaya says, well, look at it this way. Remember, what did we say? That if I declare, says the Mishnah, to eat a half a kezayis chutz lizmano, and to be maktir a half a kezayis chutz lizmano, there's no pigul. But, by contrast, if I plan to eat a half a kezayis chutz lizmano and have the mizbeach eat a half a kezayis chutz lizmano, then that is conjoinable because I've used the two verbs of achila, right? Isn't that what we said? So therefore, v'ha haktorah b'yoser b'chdei achilas prasu. And many times it takes the mizbeach much longer than k'dei achilas pras to eat that half a kezayis, and yet it's still conjoinable. So how do you reconcile it? So the Gemara answers, Dilma behesek gadol. No, maybe the only time it's subject to pigul is when my machshava is that I plan to burn that half a kezayis in a large fire, which will go quickly and be within the shear of bichdei achilas pras. So therefore, it's not a proof from there. Next, let's go back to that line, Lechol kachatzi zayis ulaktir kachatzi zayis kosher, as the Mishnah had said, and this is now the third time we're citing it, fourth time. If I had a machshava of half a kezayis, I'm going to eat chutz lizmano, and a half a kezayis, I'm going to be maktir on the mizbeach chutz lizmano, it's kosher, it's not pigul. So taima delechol ulahaktir halechol v'lechol davar she'ein darko lechol mitzdaref. So by inference, we might infer from here, it's only because I'm having a machshava of being maktir a half a kezayis chutz lizmano. But what if that thing that is meant for the mizbeach, let's say the intestines, right, or the kidneys, I instead of saying I'm going to place a half a kezayis chutz lizmano, I say I'm going to eat a half a kezayis of the emurim chutz lizmano. It sounds like from the Mishnah that, even though that's not something that normally a person is permitted to eat because it's meant for the Mizbeach, nonetheless, those two eating, machshavas of eating, are conjoinable to create pigul. So we see that even though you're thinking about something she'ein darko lechol, that is not normally eaten, it's still considered to be eating vis-a-vis the laws of pigul. So haketani reisha lechol eshedarko lechol in she'ein darko lo. But that directly contradicts a previous line in the Mishnah. The previous line in the Mishnah said that only when you're thinking about eating something that is normally eaten are you subject to pigul. So if I'm thinking about eating the intestines, instead of eating a piece of meat from the korban, it sounds like from the first part of the Mishnah that that's not subject to pigul. So we have a direct contradiction between the Reisha and the Seifa. So how do we reconcile it? Amar Rebbe Yirmiyah Hamani Rebbe Eliezer He Amar Mechashven Me'achilas Adam Lachilas Mizbeach or Me'achilas Mizbeach Lachilas Adam. So the answer is that our Mishnah actually switches Tanoim in the middle without telling us. The first part goes according to the Chachamim, who say that if it's not something normally eaten, it's not subject to pigul. And Rabbi Eliezer disagrees and says, as long as it's subject to be consumed by the Mizbeach, if you have thoughts of eating it, then it is subject to pigul. Ditnan, hashochet es hazevach lechol davar shein darko lechol ulahaktir davar shein darko lahaktir kosher v'Rebbe Eliezer posel. That's exactly the machlokas in this brisa that says that if a person has a thought of eating something himself which is meant for the Mizbeach, or for being maktir something which is not meant to be on the Mizbeach but is rather meant to be eaten, then it's not subject to pigul, if those thoughts are chutz lizmano. But Rabbi Eliezer says, I disagree, and it is subject to pigul. So
he says posel.
Yeah, but it's talking about the right. You're right, but it could be in this context. It's talking about a posel of pigul. It's not clear what the language is, but the point is that even if it means posel and causing the korban to become pasul, the point is that the Tanakama holds you can't even pasul it because it's not a valid machshava. Okay, Abaya Omar. Abaya says that's a contrived answer. To say that the Mishnah switches from one Tana to another in the middle of the Mishnah, not exactly something that we would like to use lechatchila. So he says, Afilu tema rabbanon, v'lo tema halechol v'lechol davar shein darko lechol, ela ema halechol v'lechol davar shedarko lechol. So Abaya says, I think you made the incorrect inference to start your whole questioning process to begin with. Really, our whole Mishnah goes like the Chachamim. When our Mishnah says that if you have a half a kazayas thought on eating and a half a kazayas thought on being maktir on the Mizbeach, they're not conjoinable, you don't infer from that if instead of a half a kazayas of being maktir, you have a thought of a half a kazayas of eating the emurim, but rather it's if you have a half a kazayas machshava of eating a piece of meat, and then another half a kazayas machshava of also eating meat, then the halacha is they are conjoinable and there's pigul. But 1 second says the Gemara, "Mai kamashmalan, idavar shadarko lechol kamashmalan mereisha, shadarko lechol kamashmalan mereisha shmamina." He says if the chiddush is to tell me that when I'm having two machshavas of a half a kazayas of edible items, of human food items, I can conjoin them together. I already learned that from inference from the first part of the Mishnah, because it said, Kachatzi zayis bachutz, Kachatzi zayis lamachar pasul. That it says that if my machshava is on a half a kazayis chutz lizmano, and another half a kazayis chutz lemakomo, I pasul the korban, but there's no kares. Ha kachatzi zayis lamachar pigul. He says, by inference, if my second thought would be chutz lizmano also, then not only would it be pasul, but there would be pigul and kares as well. So ela ilechol ulahaktir midukya dereisha. So the Gemara says rather the inference that you're supposed to make is that what? Ilechol ulahaktir midukya dereisha shmami no lechol davar shedarko lechol in she'ein darko lechol lo. So the Gemara says, and if it's coming to teach me that matter itself, that achila and haktorah are not mitzdaref, that is telling me the chiddush that don't think that haktorah is a form of eating and therefore it can conjoin with thoughts of human eating, If that what it's telling me, so Shmamina lechol davar shedarko lechol in shein darko lechol lo. So he says that's only when. I'm sorry. I lechol olahakter miduki dereisha shmamina. And if that's part of the question, if it's coming to tell me that achila and haktara are not conjoinable, that's already inferred from the reisha also. Because what did the reisha say? Because it says that when, like Rashi says, the ketani lechol davar shedarko lechol havya machshava, that only when you're thinking about something that is normally eaten is it a proper machshava. Avo lechol davar she'ein darko lechol lo havi machshava. But if you're thinking about eating something that is not normally eaten, that's not a machshava. Shma mina di im chishev lechol chatzi zayis basar v'chatzi zayis emurim lo mitzdarfi v'kol shekain lechol chatzi zayis basar lakti chatzi zayis emurim lo mitzdarfi. He says, if so, like, and this is part of the question, lechol davar shedarko lechol in shein darko lechol lo. He says, if the first part of the Mishnah tells me that only when I'm thinking about something that is edible for humans is it subject to pigul, so hashta uma lechol v'lechol davar shein darko lechol lo mitzdaref lechol olahakter mi boy. So if I learn from the Reisha that if I'm having two machshavas of half a kazayas, but the first half a kazayas is edible for humans and the second half a kazayas is not edible for humans, they're not conjoinable, then surely when my first half a kazayas is on a half a kazayas that's edible for humans, and my second machshava is to be makdir half a kazayas of a murim, so surely that's not mitzaref, because I've got two disadvantages. One is that it's not edible for humans, and two, that it's not even achila, but rather it's haktara. So why do you need the whole Mishnah, that whole line in the Mishnah bichlal? So the Gemara answers no. Lechol ulahaktir itzterich. I'll tell you why. You need to tell me the chiddush of when I have a machshav of half a kazayas of eating and a half a kazayas of haktara afterwards. Salkadaita chamina hasam hu delav ki urchei kamachashev. Aval hacha debahai ki urchei v'hai ki urchei emel litzdaref kamash malon. He says the chiddush is like this. I might think that it's only not pigul when my first half of kazayas is thinking about eating something that's edible, and my second thought is about eating something that's meant for the mizbeach because it's not an edible item. But if my first thought is about eating for a human a half a kazayas of meat, and my second thought is about being maktir half a kazayas of a murim on the mizbeach, which is normative, which is a normal act, maybe that's better because I'm placing it on the mizbeach where it belongs. And maybe therefore it is mitzdarif, it is a pigul-able offense, right? And therefore you need the Mishnah to tell me. So the bottom line according to Abaya is that you can't infer anything about eating something that's not edible from the Mishnah. In other words, we can infer that it has to be edible for human consumption. And if I think about eating a murim, then that's not conjoinable. Why then does the Mishnah talk about only haktara? The answer is, says Abaya, that the chiddush is that even though haktara, you're thinking about offering something on the mizbeach that is normative for the mizbeach, you might think that that's conjoinable. The chiddush is that it's not conjoinable. Hadron alach kol azvachim shekiblu dama. Let's quickly do the Mishnah. It's much easier. Kol hapsulim sheshachtu shchitasin keshera, shehashchita keshera bezorim uvenashim uva'avadim uvatemeim. Now, if a person is a non-Kohen, he's a non-kosher Kohen, and he goes ahead and shechts, that shchita is kosher. And therefore, if he has an improper thought, then his improper thought can passel the korban. That's the whole point of this Mishnah. So anyone who's not kosher to do the avoda, who does the shchita, that shchita is kosher. Because shchita can be done by a non-Kohen, it can be done by a woman, it can be done by an eved, and it could even be done by someone who is tameh. Now, how is someone who is tameh going to do the shchita if he can't get into the Beis HaMikdash? The answer is he can use a very long knife. He could stand outside the temple, use a samurai sword. He's standing outside the temple, and he'll do the shchita while standing outside. My brother-in-law learned under Rabbi Moshe Tendler, he should be well. And so someone once came to him and said, Rebbe, I'd like you to give a haskama for my sefer, an approbation. So Rabbi Tendler said, bring me a very long pen. So he said, why? Because it says in the pasuk, midvar sheker tircha. Distance yourself from falsehood. Anyway, so that's a joke. But anyway, so the same thing. You can use a very long knife if you're tamei, and you can shech the animal.
You can Ezra's nashim tamei? Because I mean, that's the only way it's conceivable.
Or he could be standing on the outside, on the northern side of the northern side. Uva tameim, okay, va'afilu b'kadshe kadshin. And that's true that a tamei person could shecht even higher level kachim. Uvilvad shelo yu tameim nogim bebasar, provided that the person who's tamei doesn't actually touch the meat. Leficha chen poslin b'machshava, and therefore, since they're kosher, these people to do shchita, if they have a thought of pigul, they will contaminate the korban. V'kulan shekiblu es hadam chutz lizmana v'chutz l'makomo im yesh dam hanefesh yachzer hakosher v'yakabel. But that's only for shchita. But if they try to do the other three stages of the avoda, which require sheirus of a kohen, so then that is invalid. And therefore, whatever machshava they have is inconsequential. And furthermore, if a non-kohen does the Kabbalah, then a kohen can rectify that by going back to the animal's neck and receiving more blood into a new receptacle. Kibel hakosher v'nosan lapasli yatsu lakosher. Another rectifiable offense is if a kohen did the Kabbalah and gave it to a non-kohen, all he has to do is take it back from the non-kohen and resume the avoda. Kibel biyamina v'nasan l'smalo yachzer liyamina. Another rectifiable offense. We know you're not allowed to do the avoda with your left hand, even if you're a kohen. So if you put the receptacle in your left hand, just put it back in your right hand, and you've rectified the problem. Kibel b'chli kodesh v'nasan l'kli chol yachzer l'kli chodesh. If you receive the blood in a ministering receptacle that was sanctified, and then you pour it into a plastic bucket, you can rectify that by just pouring it back into the kli shares. Nishbach min hakli ala ritzba va'asafo kosher. If you collected the blood, if you did Kabbalah in a kli shares and it spilled on the floor, just no problem. Scoop it up from the floor, put it back in the kli shares, and you've rectified the problem. And we've seen these all before. Nasna al gabe hakevesh lo keneged hayesod. Nasna esaniton lamata lamailon, vesaniton lamailon lamata, vesaniton b'fnim b'chutz, vesaniton b'chutz b'fnim. Im yesh dam hanefesh yachzer hakosher v'yakabel. And finally, if you misplaced the blood on the mizbech, which we saw several days ago, you sprinkled the blood in the wrong place. Let's say you put it on the kevesh, on the ramp, instead of on the sides of the altar. Or you place the blood on a part of the side of the mizbech that does not have a corresponding yesod, the protruding base. Or you put it above the line instead of below the line, or vice versa. Or you put it on the outer altar instead of the inner altar, or vice versa. In all of these cases, all you need to do is redo the Kabbalah. And like if you remember from when we had this discussion, we had said that either there's a whole machlokas whether misplacement of blood you're yotzei b'di'evet or not, but our Mishnah says that either you understand this Mishnah is talking about where a puzzle person did it, and therefore it has to be repeated by a kosher kohen, or you could also understand that a misplacement of blood on the mizbeach doesn't count, and therefore a regular kohen should just go ahead and redo the Kabbalah and redo the Zrika. This is where we'll hold it for today, and we'll resume Emir Hashem tomorrow.